Hello, Instagram. Hello, Instagram friends. Hello, Instagram community. It is Dr. Iyabo on Tea Time with Dr. Iyabo on a Wednesday. On a Wednesday, you guys know you can catch my tea time now, not only on Sundays, but really any day of the week that my wonderful guests are available, right? So I'm so glad so many of you are joining already. Thank you for joining. Now, do me a favor as you join, okay? Do me a favor as you join. Tag 1 or 2 or 3 of your friends and family on this live, okay? Tag them on this live because we're talking about one of the most important topics in life. We're talking about happiness, okay? We're talking about happiness and we're talking about it. Hello, hi from Malawi. It seems like I have a lot of friends from Malawi. Hi from Malawi. So I'm so glad so many of you are on here, but do me a favor before I bring Tana Amen on. Can you please tag a few of your friends on this live? The more the merrier. We want to share. Hello from Germany. Hello from Germany. Hi, Alexandria. I see you in there. Hello from Germany. Hello from Malawi. I see all of you from all over the world. I see there are many of you that want to learn about happiness. Hello from Atlanta, Georgia. There's an Atlanta, Georgia in the house. That is beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, Tana, are you here yet? So many people joined so fast that I'm not even sure if Tana is here yet. So as you guys are joining, hello from New Jersey. You love my content and my videos. Thank you so much. Welcome from Nigeria, from New York, from New Jersey, from Côte d'Ivoire. Oh my gosh. From Côte d'Ivoire. The United Nations is on my live today. I'm so humbled. And then there's somebody from Turkey. There's a Nigerian who is viewing from Istanbul, Turkey. Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you. Somebody says they just started following me today. I'm a blessing. Thank you so much. I'm so humbled. And I'm so thankful to all of you. I wake up every day just so happy to put out more and more content out there because I know that you guys love my content. There's Abuja, there's South Africa. Wonderful. Let me see if Tana is here yet. I'm not sure if Tana is here. If she's here, I'll bring her on. Let me invite. I'm not sure if she's here yet, but thank you guys so very much. Hi, Tana.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm so good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. And I'm going to adjust my stand. Give me 1 second. It's so lovely to see you. Okay, let me see. I think we have to do some adjustments here. Whoops. Did I make it better? Okay.
Yes. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I can hear you, but it's just that you're a little bit quiet. I'm not sure why.
How about now?
I was hearing you fine until I joined. So I just want to make sure everybody else can hear.
Yes. So people, ladies and gents, not people, can you tell us you can hear me and Tana okay?
They said they can hear. Okay, I can hear you okay. I can hear you well enough.
Okay, good. As long as the audience can hear. Very good. Wonderful to see you, Tana.
You too. You look so beautiful.
Thank you. You too. I've been waiting for this day for quite a while.
Oh, me too. It's such a pleasure.
I know. Before I even introduce you, I started following your husband a while ago. Yeah. So, and to tell you the secret, I followed your husband for a while. I tried to invite him on my tea time. I think I sent an email or something and it didn't work. And I'm like, you know what? He's probably too busy. And then somehow through his posts, I saw you and I'm like, I'm going to follow her as well. And I followed you for a while and I saw that, of course, you guys, your platform is quite congruent. You talk about similar things. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to invite his wife.
I'm so honored.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
So I'm so happy that you're here because I know that we will learn a lot from you, not just about brain health, but a lot more about who you are and what you offer. And I'm so honored that you took the time to come out here to join me and my audience. So your resume, of course, is very long, so I'm going to give a short and summarized version. So this is beautiful Tana Amen. She's a New York Times best-selling author. She's going to tell us about her book or her books. Do you have more than one, or?
So I've written 9 books. My most recent one, so most of them have been on health and wellness. My most recent one is called The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, and it's a memoir. So very different.
Okay, that's wonderful. 9 books. I need to get a few of them. I don't have any of your books, but
we'll
think you're going to send me one.
Yeah, I'll send you one. I'll send you a couple.
Please, yeah, send me a few because I want to read them. So Tana is a New York Times best-selling author of 9 books you just heard. She's a health and fitness expert. She's a nurse. She's a registered nurse, I believe, right? Yeah. And she's also the vice president of Amen Clinics, which I believe she owns with her husband. Her husband is a psychiatrist, but she's also a brain warrior like her husband. She's a speaker, as you can see. She's a mom. She's also a black belt. You have to tell us about the black belt part. I'm so curious to know. Can you tell us what that's about? Is that in martial arts?
Yes, I've studied martial arts for many years. Recently, I'm sort of nursing an injury because of many years of martial arts, but it's a passion of mine. I absolutely love martial arts. As somebody who grew up in a very chaotic and traumatic environment, I found it very, very empowering, and I think it's very helpful for girls to know how to protect themselves. And so, I didn't start out planning to get a black belt. I just did it because I truly loved it, and I just was every day showed up doing the best I could. And after I knew it, after a while, all of a sudden I had 2 black belts. So it's just, it's like you probably didn't start, like you didn't just show up one day and become a doctor. It takes intense focus. And over time, you focus long enough on something and great things happen.
Yes. Wow. That's impressive. Did you start the black belt well into your adulthood, or were you still a child when you started that?
So I took some self-defense classes when I was younger after a very negative event that happened. I was actually assaulted on the street when I was walking to high school. I was 15 years old, and I was pulled down an alley. And so it was very traumatic. And so I felt very scared for a while, and I thought, you know what, I'm not willing to go through life like this. I'd spent enough of my life being scared as a child because of situations and circumstances at home, and I thought, I'm done with this. So I decided to start training. What happened was I took some self-defense classes. I couldn't afford at that time regular classes ongoing. I had my baby, I had my daughter, fast forward, and I was putting her into a car, and I had something like a PTSD reaction. So as I was putting her into my car, I was bending over in the car, and a man came up behind me. He didn't do anything, but he walked up behind me, and I had this reaction because that's how I was attacked before, was from behind. And I completely freaked out, and I thought, you know what, I would be so vulnerable and helpless with this baby in my hands if someone wanted to do something. And that's when I started training. And I did it partially hoping that my daughter would pick up martial arts and fall in love with it. She didn't so much. I made her train for a while to protect herself, but I fell absolutely in love with it.
Wow. You know what? This gives me chills because I have 2 daughters. One is 18, one is 24, and I'm always so concerned about their safety. We live in Atlanta. It's so funny. My younger daughter and I were just discussing this the other day. She was telling me about something that people do. And I know we're talking about things other than happiness, but this is related to happiness. We were on a walk, and she was telling me that, you know what, Mom? They say that these days that if you're driving and someone just hits you from behind very lightly,
don't get out.
Don't get out.
Don't get out. I've always told my daughter that.
Yeah. I didn't know. So, they learn these things. And we talk about social media, that social media is bad, but they do learn some of these safety things from social media. And I'm like, I'm so proud of you because I'm hearing this for the first time, So, anyway, I'm so glad you're here. Is there anything you'd like to tell people before we go into the topic? My community would love to hear from you. Do you want to say hi, hey, to my community before we
I'm
start?
So excited to meet your community. So this is an honor for me. And you're talking about something near and dear to us. My husband has a book. I see you have a book on happiness. And
Yes,
my
I do.
husband has a book on happiness, and I helped actually create a course on happiness with my
Ah,
husband.
yeah.
So it's a fun topic to talk about.
Yes, it's so fun. I know I wrote my permanent happiness book after my dad passed because I was truly a daddy's baby. I was so close to my
Mm.
dad. I was a mommy's baby too, but more so a daddy's baby. And I honestly thought my dad was going to live forever, honestly.
Oh,
So when he passed, he died in his sleep in Nigeria. He had just left Atlanta. They came to visit us in Atlanta. And I had a dream while he was here that he was going to pass, but I wasn't scared or anything. And literally he got home 2 weeks after and he passed away in his sleep. So I was grieving for a while, and I basically wrote that book in about 6 weeks. I wrote about 60,000 words just thinking about my dad. And it's out there. I'd love to send it to you,
I would
honestly.
love that.
I'd love to.
Yes,
Yes.
I'd be
So
honored.
so today, everyone, we're talking about happiness. So important, especially in these times that we
Yeah.
live in. It has not been easy. A lot of people are still recovering from all of the stresses of the pandemic, from losing loved ones, from being cooped up at home. There's just so much. So some of us flourished during the pandemic. Like, I'm a homebody, I flourish at home, but many people did not flourish during the pandemic. So I decided that I wanted to bring Tana on to talk about happiness. So Tana, what is happiness? What does it mean?
I heard this saying a while back that success is having what you want, but happiness is wanting what you have. And it's easy to just like gloss past that. But when you really dig into this, happiness is wanting what you have. I mean, when I think about that, it means that you are content with what you have, right? So it's wanting what you already have. It means that you don't have to have more in order to feel happy. Success is the pursuit of more, right? And it's what keeps us motivated, and that's okay. Sorry, I've got my cat is like all over me. My cat makes me happy sometimes
Oh
when he's not
yeah,
trying to kill me. He's a little bipolar.
pets make us
Um,
happy. Yeah.
yeah. So happiness is wanting what you have. And so in other words, it's okay to be motivated. It's okay to be driven. It's okay to want success and want more. But, but if you have to have that to be happy, then that's where the conflict comes in, right? If we can be happy on the journey, and that's what I learned in martial arts. One of the big lessons for me in martial arts was being happy with where you're at. Focusing, people who join to focus on just getting a black belt, they're often the ones that never finish. It's the ones who are really immersed in the actual experience and the journey that end up loving it and staying in it long term. So, and that's really what that saying encompasses. And I think it's a really important saying. So it's really learning to be content and find moments of joy where you're at. And that's been challenging for the last few years, right? But I think there's never been a more important time than now that we have to practice on that. And I think of happiness as a daily. So, I think in Western culture, we often feel sort of entitled to be happy. Maybe entitled is not the word, but we pursue happiness. We feel a little bit entitled to happiness. But happiness, I think of it instead of a feeling or something I have a right to. I think of it as a daily practice. So I think of it as a daily practice. So I think of love, happiness, forgiveness, all of those are daily practices. That puts me in a position of responsibility and power, as opposed to waiting for the feeling to happen to me, if that makes sense. Because then I can practice daily things that focus my mind on being happy. If you just wait for it to happen, good luck with that, because our minds tend to drift to what's negative. That's our biology. Physiologically and biologically, our brains focus on what's a threat. So you have to practice, focusing on the things that make you happy.
I believe that, but of course, that was a journey for me to get there, right?
Mhm.
So Tana, I get it, right? In middle age, at 52, we've all both been through what we've been through. We get it now, right?
Right.
We get it now. But, telling a 23-year-old or a 30-year-old, be happy where you are now,
Oh, absolutely.
want what you have. Some of them will say, well, it's easy for you, Tana, to say that. It's easy for you, Dr. Iyabo, to say that when your lives are this and that and that, you want what you have, but I'm still struggling. I don't have any money. I don't have a job. My boyfriend just jilted me. How can I want what I have? What do you say to those people?
Okay, you just opened up a whole, you opened up a whole thing, but I like this
That's
question.
what I do.
Okay, so I want to, before I answer that question, I want to tell you a funny story. I
Okay.
grew up, like I said, in a very chaotic, traumatic environment. My uncle was a drug addict. My other uncle was murdered in a drug deal gone wrong. There was sexual abuse. There was kind of, you name it. It was that garden variety, dysfunctional family, right? A lot of poverty. So it was a little crazy for me growing up. Um, I got obsessed with studying something called ACE scores, Adverse Childhood Experiences. Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, absolutely love this work because what they showed is kids who grew up in trauma and chaos, they tend to get 7 of the 10 most common causes of preventable illnesses, and they die an average of 20 years earlier. So they started studying this because they're like, wow, these kids who grew up in trauma and chaos, they're not doing very well, right? They're getting sicker and they're dying earlier. And so I became obsessed with this because I was a really sick kid. I was sick all the time, had cancer in my 20s that came back over and over and over. I've had medical surgeries, and I'm like, this makes sense. This is my life. So what happens is when you grow up in an environment like this, to your point, that 23-year-olds who grew up in these past few years had their prom taken away from them, had graduation taken away from them. They've never been through these types of experiences like in other countries where they're constantly war torn. We've never experienced that, right? So growing up in those chaotic environments, many of us did grow up with that. We grew up in poverty, we grew up in chaos, we grew up in, all kinds of with issues. When you grow up in those environments, it actually changes your brain. Your brain does not develop the same as with when you grow up in a stable environment with loving parents where it's predictable and safe. Yeah. Your brain changes, your brain develops differently, and you develop something called a bias for negativity. So I started to learn about this, but it reminded me of a time that my husband, we were developing an app on one of our websites, and on that app is something to help train for happiness, right? So he wanted me to play one of the games they were about to put on there. And it's where you watch the happy faces go by, and there's all kinds of faces going by. Happy faces, mad faces, scary faces, and you're supposed to pick out the happy faces and ignore the unhappy or scary faces. So it trains you to notice happy faces.
Happy faces.
And I actually got irritated because I was like, this is the dumbest game I've ever seen in my life. I don't care about the happy faces. They're not a threat to me. So people who grew up in an environment like I did, we have that negativity that bias for negativity because it saved our lives, because we needed to have that, right? Now, that doesn't mean this idea that we want to practice happiness doesn't mean we have to give up the ability to protect ourselves. You don't want to give that up, but you can practice controlling it so it doesn't control you. And again, that's one thing martial arts taught me. I want to control it so that it doesn't control me. Because we are literally born and going into this environment where our brains don't develop the same. Our cortisol is higher, our adrenaline is higher, our amygdala, which is the emotional center of your brain, is completely on fire like all the time. Your frontal lobes, the judgment center of your brain, is less active. So all of these things begin to happen, and you don't have the same reaction that other people have. So it is much harder to be happy. I definitely have a bias towards negativity. I definitely am always looking over my shoulder. It drives my family crazy. I'm like, I live in this beautiful community. I still look over my shoulder. I still check the locks all the time. So, but I now know how to control it better. So I've worked at it, not because it comes naturally. It does not come naturally. It's because I work at it, because I don't want to live there. I started to notice that when I turn on the news, I'm unhappy. When I go outside and watch my hummingbirds, I feel calmer, more peaceful. I feel happier. So that means that I can actually do things to train my brain to be happier. That doesn't mean I have to not be safe. So same with these kids today, right? They're growing up in a really difficult time. My daughter, we have 3 teenagers now, so we adopted my 2 nieces because they grew up in total chaos, in total, really awful environment. So we adopted them, and they, right before the pandemic. So we've got these 3 teenage girls in the house, pandemic happens, and it's chaos. These girls are not happy. They're really unhappy.
I have 2, and I know. Well, I have one who lives at home. The other one doesn't live with us, but she still visits a lot.
So
Yeah.
You know how hard it was, right? Anybody who has
Yes.
kids in the house, especially teenagers who lost prom and graduation and all of that stuff, my daughter especially, who's a little social butterfly, really didn't do well. So
Mm-hmm.
we had to sit them down. We did family meetings like every day at dinner. We would like go around the table, what went well today? We just automatically would focus their brains on what went well today. And then we taught them how to meditate,
Mm-hmm.
and we started helping them do yoga. And so, like, prayer and meditation are just like one of the best ways to ground yourself.
Yes.
And so those are just things that you can do every day. You tell your brain will do what you tell it. It's trying to make happen what you tell it. So if you tell yourself every morning when you wake up, or you say to yourself, what's going to happen that's going to go well today? Or, today is going to be a great day. Or how is today going to be a great day? Your brain wants to answer that. It's going to try to find what's going to go well today. So those are just little things you can do. And we'll talk about more tips as we go, but
Yes.
that's just one of the things. I could go on and on with these ACE scores, but
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just the tip of the iceberg.
And I was writing down a lot as you were talking, and from everything you were saying, it seems like happiness is a choice.
It's I So that's even complicated, because here's the thing. Yes and no. I'd say it's a daily practice. A choice, if you say to me that happiness is a choice, I would say there are things we have to look at. Okay. So because there are also issues like brain injuries that affect happiness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
hormonal issues. There
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
infections. So I'll give you two examples there. One of the people in our house got Lyme disease, went from being an incredibly well-adjusted, driven, social person to highly anxious, couldn't sleep, very sick, right? Hard to be happy when you're going through that. And
Yeah.
another person, I actually had PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a
Mhm.
hormonal imbalance that just really messes with you. And another one of the people in our family has the same thing. And as a result of that, that can mess with happiness. That's something you have to actually get fixed. So when we treat people at Amen Clinics, we treat them according to 4 circles. Biological, what's going on with your brain, your body, your hormones, your infections, if you had an infection, because that will affect your ability or your choice to be happy,
True.
right? So we have to
Yes.
fix that too. So yes, it's a
Okay.
daily practice, but we have to fix those things. But then
Okay.
there's your psychology, and that's what we're talking about. That's the choice part. That's where you discipline your mind. And then there's the social circle, because who you hang out with matters. People are contagious. If you're hanging
Tell
out
me.
with people who are super unhappy, doing drugs, getting into trouble, you're more likely to be that.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
And then there's the spiritual circle, which matters. Purpose, people who are purposeful live 11 years longer and they are happier.
I love that. I love that. Purpose is dear to my heart, but that's a number. That's a different life for another day. So maybe not happiness is a choice, but maybe happiness is intentional.
Intentional, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because getting your brain assessed, if you're not happy, getting your brain assessed, that's
Mhm.
intentional,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Figuring out why you're not happy.
Yes. So it's intentional. It's not that, because there's some things in life that we just don't choose. Like I didn't choose to go through menopause.
Amen to that.
I didn't choose to go through menopause. And when in the evening, like yesterday evening, the three of us, myself, my husband, and my daughter, were here watching Netflix, and I started to sweat, and they're like, oh,
Right.
but it's cold. I said, but I'm hot. And they're like, okay, but it's freezing. I said, okay, I'll just strip naked then. And my daughter was like, no, don't
Right.
strip naked with your husband here.
I love
So,
that.
yeah, things like menopause,
Yeah, it's
will
like man
affect
on pause. Right. Absolutely.
men on pause. Yeah, I just started to feel the beads of sweat on my forehead, and
Yeah.
I'm like, it's coming. Yeah.
It's so funny. You're speaking my language. I think we're pretty close to the same age. I'm like a year older than you, I think, by what you just said. So, yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm laughing now, but when the hot flashes first hit me when I was 48, which was 4 years ago, I'm telling you, Tana, I was scared. I ended up in the ER. I got there and they did all the labs. Everything was fine. And they were laughing at me. They're like, it's your perimenopause. And I'm like, what? I honestly thought I was having a heart attack because I was
I know.
sweating. My heart was pounding. And I told my daughter, I'm like, let's go to the ER. I've never felt like this before. That was 4 years ago. So it's better now. I've adjusted my diet. I've adjusted some things,
Right.
and yeah. So
So
going
funny.
back, yeah, going back to happiness. Um, is happiness uniformly the same with everyone? Now, let me, I was born and raised in Nigeria. When you see a lot of kids on TV in Africa, and they're outside, in the village, and they're just laughing and dancing. They don't have electricity, but they're happy, they're having fun. And you're thinking, these kids have close to nothing, but they're happier than the average kid in America. What's going on with that? So I wanted to ask that. So is happiness uniformly the same with all of us all over the world, or is it subjective? Even, why are we still not as happy in America when we have all these resources and all the lovely things of life?
That's actually a tough question because I would say it's more subjective, but I'd also say it's value dependent because there are some countries that don't actually value happiness the way Western culture does. So if you think of Asian cultures, there are some cultures that actually they think that it's selfish to value happiness, your personal happiness over cultural good, over the societal good. There are some cultures that actually believe that that they're afraid to feel too happy because they feel like the other shoe is going to fall. So that happiness and misery are closely connected. So if you allow yourself to feel too much joy, you're about to feel pain along with that. Like, it's very interesting. So I'd say that that's somewhat subjective, and each culture values it differently. There are some cultures that don't believe in showing that much emotion, right? Certainly Western culture, we have the pursuit of success and money and things. And so and we feel that we deserve to be happy. So that's not a judgment of any kind. It's just it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's a thing. Right. So that just happens to be what some of our values are based on. But there are other people who don't value that. You'll see people who are highly religious who just walk around with this light, this like joy that they feel inside, right? And that's because their values are very, very different. What makes them happy is very different from someone who's pursuing money and success. And so it is very subjective, and I think it's very different based on your values.
That is true. What about those people though, which again, I look at people and sometimes I feel like, are they really happy? There's some people I feel like they think they're happy, but if I look at them, or maybe if you and I looked at them, I know that's judging. I'm like, are they really happy, or are they pretending to be happy? Are there some people in life who think they're happy, but they're actually not happy?
So if they think they're happy, they're probably happy. Pretending to be happy and them thinking they're happy are probably two different things. If they think they're happy, then they're probably happy. And I have to question like why we would look at them and go, they're not really happy. They just think they're happy. What does that say about us, right?
True.
But I think that's different than pretending to be happy, because I know a lot of people where I live, the community where I live, I think it's less so now since COVID probably. But that was a big thing. It's like, oh, put on the happy face, dress nice, go to the country club, whatever. It's like you have to put on this image, and I've always sort of not liked that feeling of having to keep up with everyone and pretend to be something you're not. It bothers me.
Yeah.
But I used to be like that. So to be, in all fairness, until I think when I was in my late 30s, I was always worried about what people thought of me. So I think that just takes maturity before you stop caring. My husband has this funny saying. He says, when you're 18, you're worried about what everybody thinks of you. Like your whole world's going to fall apart based on what everybody thinks of you. Right. When you're 40, you don't care what anybody thinks of you.
Yes.
And when you're 60, you realize nobody's been thinking about you at all. They've all been worried about
themselves. That's so true. That's so true. Because when I was going through my divorce in my 30s, I was very conscious of myself. I was hiding. I didn't want people to know what was going on. I just, I was in the shell. I just didn't want people to know. But as it got further and further, and I made up my mind that I was out and I was going to file for divorce. I was 39. I just put it all out there. I'm like, you know what? This is what I've been going through. Whatever. I just want happiness. And I think that's what maybe makes me judgmental now. To answer your question, sometimes I look at some women, because there's so many women that come to my page and ask me questions, and they tell me what's going on in their marriage, but then they say, oh, but I'm happy, I'm fine with it anyway. And then I think to myself, is she really happy with everything she told me that is going on in her marriage? you know, and I can't help but judge them and think, I wasn't happy with that. How can anybody be happy and content with that? So yeah, you know, but
Right. So part of it is based on what you went through.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, based on what I went through
Well,
and
and I mean,
thinking,
if you think about that's fair because we all do that. I mean, if you think about just the idea that if you let's take two different women. One has no interest in having children, and society in general would be like, oh, women without children, they can't be happy, right?
yeah,
But actually, studies don't show that. So, and then the other one is like, no, like she's got three kids, and a woman without kids would look at the woman with three kids and how chaotic her life is and be like, well, why would anybody do that to themselves? Right?
that's
Why would you ever choose that life? So, you know, the woman with three kids would look at the one without kids and be like, that's so awful. Like, why would she want to be alone? And why would she not
yes.
want children? But each of them have their own idea about what having a bunch of kids looks like.
Yes,
So,
that is such a nice example. I love that example. I do because my daughters are like that. One of my daughters wants all of these children, and the other
right.
one is like, I just want fur babies. I just want cats and dogs. I don't know how anybody would want to have humans. So it's like, that's so true. So
Yeah.
now, practical tips for happiness. Tana, can you tell us some absolutes that we all need to be happy? Please.
You know, again, it's hard to tell individuals what they need to be happy, but I think
Okay.
there are tips you can help that daily practices that you can
Okay.
do to help people be happy.
Be happy.
So a couple of the things, one of them I already alluded to. One of the things that we do in our house is we actually intentionally, it's intentional. So my husband and I mean, fortunately for me, I have a really good partner and we do this together. Not everybody has that, but you can still do it, even if you don't. So we will literally wake up and we'll like it's like, how is today going to be a great day? Why is today going to be a great day? My husband tends to do more like today is going to be a great day. And you look for what's going to be a great day. Meditation and prayer, absolutely one of the best ways. I have monkey mind naturally, but that's one of the best ways to settle your mind. For me, exercise, intense exercise really helps. Believe it or not, what you eat matters. So certain foods can actually make you feel better. Certain foods make you feel worse. If you're increasing inflammation in your body and eating foods that are increasing stress hormones like cortisol, that's not going to make you feel better. It's not going to make you feel happier, right? So all of those things matter. There are even supplements you can take that help. Saffron has studies that have been shown to help with increase a sense of well-being and a sense of happiness and decrease.
Which one? Saffron?
Saffron. Yeah, it's actually got studies behind it. So there are lots of things like that that are all tips that you can do. But I'd say probably exercise and doing the daily practice of focusing. Those are things, but if you are struggling, if you're doing things to be happy and you're still not happy, that's when I would start thinking about maybe it's time to get assessed. Did you go through something really traumatic that's got your emotional brain fired up? Have you had a brain injury? Have you had an infection? Are you going through menopause? You know, do you have polycystic ovarian syndrome? Is there something else going on that no matter how hard you try, it's like software in your computer versus hardware, only it's in your brain. So if you've got hardware that's struggling because you had a brain injury or something like that, but you're trying to play great software, it's not going to work well. Vice versa, if you've got great hardware, your brain's great, but you've got lousy software because you're not controlling your thoughts, you're not managing your mind, right? You're still going to struggle. So it's the hardware, software, getting those to work together. So getting the biology and your psychology to work together.
Okay, thank you so much for all of that. Now with diets, can you give us a few foods that raise our happiness level?
So I would be thinking of this like in general as an anti-inflammatory diet. So the books I've written, that's what they're about. The Brain Warriors Way cookbook I wrote and the Omni Diet. It's all about anti-inflammatory foods. Whenever you increase inflammation, you have a problem. You're increasing all kinds of things that are not good in your body. So stress hormones, insulin, all kinds of things that are going to start to cause problems. And the food you eat can also increase or decrease or mess with your neurotransmitters, things like serotonin and dopamine, right? So all of that together is going to make a difference. So believe it or not, people who have ADD or sleepy brains, the foods that are better for them are going to be a little bit different than someone who's really anxious, who's a little bit OCD.
Okay.
So someone with a sleepy brain might do better on a like who had an ADD type brain, would do better on some like a high protein diet and, you know, like lots of greens, veggies, protein, and healthy fat. Someone
Mm-hmm.
with a very, very OCD, anxious brain that's busy all the time, they
Mm-hmm.
might do a little better with some healthy carbs. Carbs do not mean donuts. Okay. I'm talking about like, I'm talking about healthy carbs, maybe
Yes.
some sweet potato, you know,
Yes.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Quinoa, things that are very healthy that are anti-inflammatory. So
Right.
those types of carbs though help to increase serotonin and settle you down. So that's why food matters. And that's what I wrote all about in the Brain Warriors Way.
Okay.
But anti-inflammatory diets can really help how we feel. Because when you increase inflammation in certain foods like gluten and corn and dairy for some people and sugar, those are the four big ones. For many people, depending on you as an individual, we don't believe that one diet fits everybody, but you as an individual, those four foods tend to be the most triggering foods. Oh, and red dye tend to be the most triggering foods for moods, for
Red
people that have
dye.
red dye. Absolutely can
But
trigger
how does that
anger.
get into our food?
What's that?
How does red dye get into our food?
Oh, are you kidding? Think about children's Tylenol.
Oh yeah, all
Think
of
about medicine. Think about candy, red vines. Think
that.
about Skittles. So all of
Oh,
it,
yeah,
children's
all of that
cereal.
junk.
It's like
Yeah.
almost all children's food. And then we get mad at children because they have symptoms of ADD, but we're feeding them foods without even knowing it. The food
Yeah.
industry
Yeah.
knows it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we're feeding them foods without even knowing it
Yeah.
that are triggering anger and hyperactivity. And but the first thing we would do at Amen Clinics, it's one of the hallmark parts of our treatment is getting their food right. If we get people's
I
food
agree.
right, especially children,
Mm-hmm.
we can literally minimize the amount of medications we put people on, if not completely eliminate them.
I agree. I agree. Food is a big one. I
Yeah.
totally agree. Now with exercise, can we over exercise?
Oh, absolutely. You can
Okay.
absolutely. And I did that for years. I wore my body down, tore my body down. Over exercise can actually increase cortisol as well. So
Yes.
too much, it increases cortisol, it increases stress hormones, and it can cause you to actually have lots of problems. You're tearing your body down. We were designed to run from a tiger, right? We were designed to run from a threat.
Mm-hmm.
So short bursts of intense exercise are great. So, and you want to do strength training because especially as we get older, bone density is important. It helps with cognitive function, insulin resistance, all of those things. So strength training is really important. But over exercising will start to do the opposite. You
Okay.
will actually start to affect your body in a very negative way because of those stress hormones, and you'll start to affect your joints in a negative way. So you want to be exercising in a way that's going to lead to longevity. So we're designed to run from tigers for a short term. We can't run from tigers long term,
Long
right?
term.
So when we start over exercising for long periods of time, your body doesn't know the difference between you running a marathon and running from a tiger. It doesn't know. It just knows stress. Okay. So that's the stress. You're putting your body under stress. So
Yes.
running long term is considered a lot of stress on your body. Running short term, doing short bursts of intense exercise, that's actually really good for you. And you should take a break and do something like Pilates or yoga or
Yes. Or
walking.
yoga or bar.
Right. Or
Yeah.
walking. Like just
Yeah.
chill.
Yeah.
Go chill.
Exactly. Somebody's asking that what's considered too much exercise is everyday amount of hours. So they want to kind of
So
know
it's a
what.
little different for everybody depending on what kind of shape you're in,
Okay.
right? What kind of physical condition
True.
you're in. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely talk to a professional to figure out what your physical condition is. You can definitely exercise almost every day. I do at least 5 days a week, but the type of exercise I do varies. So I will do 3 days a week of strength training, and then I do 2 days a week of Pilates. So for me, that's perfect. And I don't overdo it. I used to do a couple of hours. Now I don't do more than an hour, usually more like 45 minutes.
Right.
So, and when I started doing that, when I backed off, all of a sudden I noticed that I don't have all of the symptoms of the stress hormones in my body.
Yes.
And not being
Yeah.
able to sleep at night, your mind racing, fatigue all the time. Like if you look up high cortisol, there's this list.
Yeah.
And if you're over exercising, you're likely to not be functioning very well. Difficulty focusing on day-to-day tasks, lack of motivation, all of that.
All of that. Yeah. And for me it was the same. Now I walk every day. I love walking.
Yeah.
I don't run anymore because when I used to run in my 30s, my knees started to complain
Yep.
a lot. So I walk every day and I strength train 2 to 3 days a week.
Excellent.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Excellent. I don't run anymore either. I did too, and I just tore my joints up.
Yeah. So two last questions and we're going to be done. Tana, I wanted to ask you, so if you're not happy, does it mean you're depressed?
So there's a difference. There's situational issues. I mean, part of it, like we talked about, is your values. So some people don't value happiness over success. Some people don't value, you know what I'm saying? So part of it you want to assess, like, what makes me happy? So if you just don't show happiness because your values are a little different, that's one thing. The other thing is there can be situational issues. So maybe you're not happy because of a situation versus like when I think of depression, depression isn't one thing. My husband always says depression is not one thing, right? It's a symptom of something else.
I
But
see.
depression, to be clinically depressed is very different from being situationally depressed.
Right. Yeah.
So if someone you love dies, or you're like my dog, we recently had to send my dog to doggy heaven. It was awful, 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 awful. He was my baby. So that's situational. I was
Yes.
really sad. That's a
Yeah.
normal reaction, and I was really sad, but that's situational. You know, one of my dearest friends, her daughter died. That's horrific. I can't think of a worse thing. She's a very strong individual. She made the decision. She was horribly, I mean, it just affected her so deeply. But after about a year, she decided, even as hard as it was, she was going to go into a ministry helping moms. And I was like, I don't know if I could do that. But that's how she pulled herself out. So she
Good.
went through situational depression. That doesn't mean she was clinically depressed.
Right.
So that's what I mean. But she made the choice to pull herself out and be happy. Now, that doesn't mean she's not affected from time to time. She is.
Mm-hmm.
She's,
Mm-hmm.
it's been years now. It's been a very long time now. She
Mm-hmm.
still gets affected by it. But just because someone gets affected by something unhappy doesn't mean they're an unhappy person.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to, because some people think if they're not happy, they're depressed. It's not as black and white as that. There's a
No,
lot of
happiness.
gray.
So there's a difference between happiness and peace, I think.
That was my
Um,
next question.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that's important. And they're closely related. And I actually try to connect them. I try to connect happiness and peace because I like that feeling of I'm monkey mind by nature. I'm monkey mind, right?
Yes.
So I try to like meditate and do things that help me to like ground myself because I find that it's easier for me to focus on happiness when I'm grounded and I'm peaceful. But
Yes.
I think peace is more like a calmness and a state of mind. Almost no matter what's happening around you, you're able to. And martial arts helps me with that. And I was a trauma nurse. I worked in a level A trauma center. And when I first started working there, I was like deer in the headlights, right? I just would freak out with everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, I realized I'm not able to help my patients if I'm in this state of mind. Me
Right.
crying and losing my mind every time someone comes in that's broken and their bodies are broken up is
Yeah.
not helpful to anybody. It's not helpful to me. It's not helpful to them. So I figured out how to be grounded. It might look cold to some people, but it's not. What it
Yeah.
is me grounding myself so I can do my job
Mm-hmm.
and be helpful and be strong for someone else. That's one of the differences. That doesn't mean I'm happy in that moment, but I am at peace. So that's different, right? I'm not happy in a trauma unit, but I am at peace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But happiness is more the feeling you have. You're able to tap into joy. Um, and we think of micro moments. One of the tips that we teach people is to think of micro moments of joy. So my dog died, right? That's not a happy thing to happen. But what I did is I put pictures of him up. I don't want to forget him, and it makes me happy to look at the pictures. It makes me feel a little sad, but it also makes me happy. Those are
Right.
micro moments of joy. I
Mm-hmm.
remember those moments, and I can actually be happy even in the midst of something sad happening.
Yes. That's peace.
Right. So I have peace even in a bad situation, but I can actually have micro moments of joy, and that's a little bit different. So the happiness, you can find happiness that's more fleeting, but you can focus on that. That's that intention of doing
Yes.
something to make yourself happy.
Right. Right. I love trying to differentiate happiness and peace because that's what my book was about. I call my book Permanent Happiness, and I say permanent happiness is actually peace, because peace is something you can have all the time.
Yes.
Because
So like you, I went
yeah.
through a really bad divorce.
Mm,
And before I met my husband, and there was a point where it's awful. It's just awful. I don't even
yeah.
know, like,
Yeah. It's just bad. It's
it's just
terrible.
bad, right? And so
Yeah.
you're fighting in court and you've got all these issues and it's
Uh-oh.
just a terrible thing. And then there's a point where it gets so bad that you're like, I'm done. I'm done feeling bad. And I
Yes.
think when you hit that point where you're just done feeling bad, that's when you start intentionally finding and seeking peace and joy.
Yes.
I mean, the peace needs to come first for me. For me, the peace had to come first. I just sought peace. Maybe I wasn't ready to feel joy in that, but I
Mm.
could feel peace in the middle of
Yes.
all the chaos.
Yeah.
It's like I can be okay. I can be okay. So I think peace is being okay and being calm.
Yes.
Joy is actually like that happier feeling, that like more
Yes.
emotion
Yeah.
of like I'm really excited and happy.
Right. And we can't have that all the time because life
No,
isn't stable. So
but you
happiness
can
is
have
going,
peace.
yeah, you can have peace all of the time, no matter what. You can decide that I'm just going to be at peace. And somebody's asking, we're going to round up in a couple minutes. Someone's asking, what's the difference between happiness and joy? Is there a difference? I don't
So
know that
like
there's a
peace, I think of
difference.
joy as a bit more permanent, and I think of happiness as a bit more fleeting. I'd have to probably dig into that a little bit more, but in my mind, that's
Yeah.
how I think. Joy is like a much more intense. I often see, like I said, some of my friends. Um, I'm very spiritual. I have a religion that I'm very deeply connected to. I'm Christian.
Me
Everybody
too.
out there is something different.
Me too.
So yeah,
Me too.
everybody's got their
Yeah,
own thing.
me too. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. I
Right.
say it, I don't hide that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I don't judge anybody for whatever they believe
Yeah,
in,
me
but
too.
that's for
Yeah.
me. So the people I know who are deeply connected to, more so than me, I wish I had the same thing. But I'll see my friends that have this light, they've got this joy, and it's just like, what is that? Like, what? That's how I first came to it. Is I'm like, I want whatever that weird thing is that you have. Like,
Yes.
why do you glow all the time?
Yeah.
Right? That's more joy that I think of.
Yeah. Well, I think of joy as more like you just said, joy as being more spiritual. Joy, when I
Right.
talk about joy, I'm referring to joy tapped into God's joy. So I don't use
It's
joy
deeper.
just like that.
It's a little
Yes.
bit deeper.
Yeah, it's deeper. Joy is closer to peace than it is
Yeah.
to happiness. Yeah.
Yes.
So this last question is key, which I'm sure you talk about it all the time, but somebody is saying, how do you stay happy and how do you stay positive if you're surrounded by negative people?
Oh, it's harder, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So, as somebody who grew up in, like I said, a pretty chaotic environment, and I adopted my two nieces for a reason, because there's a lot of people in my family who have not done the work yet, right, on themselves. So I understand this concept a lot. I married into my husband's family, and I'm like, what? Nobody's family is this like healthy. No, what? It just was a weird concept to me that they were all
Yes.
so happy and
Yeah.
healthy, and I'm like, that's not normal.
Right.
But so seeking it out, I would tell that person seeking out what makes you happy. There are some people I had to draw very serious boundaries with. And I would say my answer to that is boundaries, right? So the people that are in your life that have that tendency, that bias towards negativity, having a boundary with them. If they're people you really love, like I have a couple family members where I'm like, I adore you, but I can't
But
talk about the negative stuff all day. I'm gonna let you like I'm gonna give you like X time to like really get this off your chest, but then we're done. We're done with the
yes.
negative stuff. Okay. This is all I can handle for today. So it doesn't mean I don't love you. I just don't want to hear the negativity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then other people in my family, I'm like, I love you and I'm going to miss you. There are other people that boundary is just a hard boundary for me because they are so unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
They affect the health of my family and they affect my health. And that's not okay with me.
Yes.
So I've done way too much work and it's like, I love you, but I need to love you from a distance.
I love that. I love it because that's my philosophy as well. I love people from a distance. I just can't. I've done too much work and I've been through too much healing to let somebody take that away from me. So the person
Absolutely.
who asked that question, boundaries. You don't have to be negative like them. You don't have to cause a big fight. You do it peacefully and you just withdraw from them peacefully.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Yeah.
Oh,
Tana,
and you will have people
yeah. Sorry?
call you all sorts of names. They will think
Oh.
you're a witch sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to happen. And you know, that's one of the, okay, this is peace right here. When you actually can get to the point of realizing, like for me, I realized I wasn't put on this planet to be popular.
Yeah.
I was put here to make a difference. What you think of me is none of my business. That's okay.
Yeah.
If I'm doing the right thing for me and my family and I'm doing the right thing by God, I'm good.
You and I are best friends. We're probably what, sisters from another mother, because everything you're saying is what I say all the time, that I wasn't put on this earth to please everyone, but my
Nope.
mind, if you had a microscope to look in my heart, I wish well for everybody. Even if you call me names or whatever, I wish you well. You're not going to take my good energy away, but I'm just not
Absolutely.
going to let you come in here.
Well,
This
that's
was
why
one.
you glow like you do.
Uh,
That's why you have that. You look peaceful and you look joyful and you
Tana,
glow.
by the grace of God, my kids tell me, they pull out my pictures from my 30s and they're like, Mom, you looked a lot older in your 30s. I'm like,
Isn't that
that,
amazing?
yeah, that's what stress does to you. I look at my pictures in my 30s and I'm like, I look like a grandma in my 30s.
Isn't that
But
crazy?
yeah, so this is why happiness and joy and peace are so important. That's why they're so important. Tana, this was wonderful. Thank you so
It was
much.
such a pleasure. I
Thank you
hope I can
so
see you at
much.
some point and meet you in person.
I hope so. I hope so. And that's going to happen soon. Say hello to your husband. Tell him that we love his platform. We love all of your work. Now, Tana, please tell everybody how they can enjoy more of your knowledge, how they can get your books, how they can follow your podcast, or what is it that you have to offer us? Please tell us.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, obviously at Tana Amen on Instagram. And then I wrote The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. That's my most recent book for people who have been through trauma. That's why I wrote it. That's on Amazon. And for the health books, you can find those at amenclinics.com. I've got the Omni Diet and the Brain Warriors Way. But we actually have a happiness course. And so you can find that on Amen University. If you go to amenclinics.com, you're going to find all of our stuff. So that's, I'll leave it at that because there's a lot. It's overwhelming.
Okay,
But
so
yeah,
your website for everything, Amen. Is it Amen or Amen? Do you say Amen or
amenclinics.com.
Amen?
And then I've got my own
Amenclinics.com.
website is at Tana Amen, or excuse me, Tana, that's my Instagram,
Yeah.
tanaamen.com.
Okay, yeah, but if they come to your Instagram and click the link in your bio,
Yep.
they probably
I've
can
got the
find
link
it.
tree. Yep.
Wonderful. This was wonderful. Thank you, Tana, so much. Thank you, everyone, ladies and gents. There's some questions we couldn't take, but I'm sure you can go to Tana's website or try to, sign up for her happiness course, read her books and whatnot. Thank you all so much. This replay will be on my YouTube channel. It will be on my YouTube, which is Dr. Iyabo Webzel, and it will also be on Tana's Instagram as well. So just come to our pages if you want to watch the replay. Thank you, everyone. Tana, God
So
bless you.
wonderful.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful day.
You too. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.